Masechet Shevuot, Daf Chaf Amar Rava, Nishba al Kikar va'achala. Im shier mimena kezait nishal aleha. Achala kula en nishal aleha. You have someone who says, I make a vow that I will not eat this loaf of bread. And then he violated his vow and he ate it. But then he annuls the vow after he already ate it. Can he do that? Can you annul a vow after you already violated it? Well, it depends. If there's still a kezait left of the loaf of bread, then yes, you can annul it. You haven't completely eaten all the bread, there's still some left, you can still annul it. But if you already ate all of the bread, you completed the entire act, well then that's it, it's done, and you cannot annul the vow anymore. Amar le Rav Acha bered Rava Rav Asher, hechi dameh. Rav Acha, the son of Rava, asks Rav Asher, regarding this law that Rava said, what exactly is the case? Idamar shelo ochal mikezait kama abdel isurehe. Idamar shelo ochelena ma'irya kezait. If remember yesterday, Rava himself made a distinction between two formulas, shelo ochal and shelo ochelena. If you say shelo ochal, I will not eat this loaf, that means that you will not even eat a bite of the loaf, even one kezait. It means I will not eat from this loaf. Therefore, if he says, I will not eat from this loaf, and then he eats one kezait, already the first kezait that he eats, he has violated the vow. That's it, he's done. So what does it matter if there's a kezait left? Let's say the whole loaf is 10 kezaits. So he ate 1, 2, 3 kezaits. He already violated it. He completed an entire act of violation of the vow. So we thought the principle was, once you finish violating, then you cannot annul the vow. So he violated already because he ate a kezait. So it should be, you should say, before he starts eating, before he eats a kezait, then he can annul. But once he eats a kezait, then he can't. Why you say if there's a kezait left? And if you say that the Rava here is talking about a case where he said shelo ochelena, that means I will not eat the entire loaf, then why do you need to have a kezait left in order to annul it? Afilu kol shehu nameh, even if there's a tiny bit left. If he just has a few crumbs left of the loaf, okay, then there's still something left, and you should still be able to annul it, even if there's less than a kezait left. So, which case is Rava saying that you need a kezait left? It should be either that you have, once you eat a kezait, the first kezait, you can't annul it anymore, you cannot annul it, or it should be, as long as there's a tiny bit left, you can annul it. So what's the answer? We can answer in both scenarios, whether he said shelo ochal or shelo ochelena. Shelo ochal, migo de mehanneya le she'ela kezait batra, mehanneya she'ela nami a kezait kama. We can explain that in fact he said shelo ochal, which means I won't need any of it, even one kezait, and we can say, since the annulment will work for the last kezait, it works also for the first kezait. If there's less than a kezait left, then that's it. He's not going to be able to violate the vow anymore. So once he finishes all possibilities of violating the ketubah, there's nothing left to annul. If there's nothing left to annul, that's it, he can't annul it. But even if he violated the vow once, twice, 3 times when he ate the first few kezetot, as long as there's still a possibility of violating the vow in the future, so he can annul the vow for the future. Since he can annul the vow for what's left, so that once he annuls it, he can annul it. Once he annuls it, it works retroactively for the things that he already ate. So yes, he did violate, but there's still a possibility of violating more, then you can still annul it. Or you could say, he said in fact lo chelena, I will not eat, and that means the entire loaf. Now if there's a kezait left, that's a significant amount, enough to say I want to annul the vow. But if it's less than a kezait, what is it, just one crumb that you left? That's not considered a significant amount for which one could annul it. It's basically you ate the whole thing. If one crumb left, okay, you didn't eat the whole thing, so you didn't violate the vow yet, but there's so little left, that's not significant enough that you could say, oh, now I want to annul the vow. There has to be a significant amount left. Okay, so we answered the question in two ways. Now we have a challenge against Rava. Metibe, mi shenada shete nizirot, umana rishona v'ifrish aleha korban, ve'achar kach nishal al harishona, alta lo sheniya barishona. We learned this baraita yesterday. If someone makes a vow that he's going to be a Nazir twice, so that means normally, let's say each one's 30 days, he's going to have to be a Nazir for 30 days, finish by bringing his korban and shaving his head, and then he starts all over again, counting another 30 days, and then does the concluding rituals for that one. So let's say he counted the 30 days he was a Nazir, and he separated a korban, and then he goes to a rabbi and annuls the first vow that he made to be a Nazir. What happens? Well, then the first one goes away, but he was just a Nazir for 30 days. So that Nazirut that he did for 30 days counts for the second one. The second one comes and replaces the vow of the first vow, because the first vow goes away. So the second can take his spot, and then he can bring that korban, and then he's done with everything. So this baraita is a challenge against Rava. Rava said, once you finish eating the entire loaf, then you cannot annul the vow anymore. Over here, even though he finished his nizirut, he counted all 30 days of his nizirut, he even separated a korban, so isn't he done? And therefore, he should not be able to annul the first vow of nizirut after he already finished. That's the question. And the answer is, Hachamaiskenan b'shelo kiper. No, we're talking about a case where he did separate the korban, but he did not yet offer the korban. He's still going to be prohibited from drinking wine and becoming tameh lamet all the time that he has not yet brought his korban. So he's actually not done. He's still a Nazir. Therefore, even though the timing is finished, he finished the 30 days, he's still a Nazir until he actually offers his korban, which he didn't do yet. So this is the same as if he left over a kezait, he could still undo the vow. He still left over an important act. V'hatanya kiper, there's another version of this baraita that says, someone who shenadash nizirot, and he counted and kiper, he also brought the korban. It's still the same law. Even though he brought the korban, he can still annul his first vow. How can he annul it? He's done. Challenge to Rava, who says that if you eat the whole thing, eat the whole bread, then you cannot annul it anymore. So here he even brought his korban. And the answer to this one is b'shelo gileach v'Rabbi Eliezer he damar tiglachat me'akeva. We're talking about a case where he did not yet shave his head. In order to be finished being a Nazir, he has to not only bring korban, he also has to shave his head. And he's still not permitted to go on with his life until he goes and shaves his head. So there's still something left to do. So that in fact, that's like leaving off a kezayit. And we're assuming the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, who says that shaving the head is a necessary part of the process, and if you didn't shave your head, then you cannot yet go and stop being a Nazir. Now a third question from yet another version of the Braita that said, even if he brought his korban, even if he shaved his head, still he can go ahead and annul the first vow, and then the second vow comes in place of the first one, and then he's totally done. So here he's totally done. Challenge to Rava, who said that if you finish eating the whole loaf, then you cannot annul the vow. How could Rava say that? Amar Rav Asher nizirut karamit mi garam lasheniya shelo tachol rishona be'ena. Rav Asher has a clever answer. You're asking from nizirut, what caused the second vow not to take effect? It was the first one, and now the first one is gone, so the second one can take effect. It replaces the first one. In other words, you can annul a vow as long as there still is an effect of the vow. You can still feel the effect of that vow that caused something. And in this case, even though he finished, he was a Nazir, 30 days, brought his korban, even shaved. So he's finished with that, but the after effect of that vow is we still feel, because he has to do another whole Nizirut, because he said twice. So the fact that the second one could not count the first time, time is because there was a vow. Because the after effect is still here, therefore he can still annul it, and he go back and annul it, and then that one will go away retroactively, and whatever he served that first time will count for the second one, and now he's totally done. That is not true for the loaf. For the loaf, as long as there's still something left, there's something to talk about. There's a kezayit left. Okay, he can still annul it. Once he finishes eating the whole loaf, that's it. There is no after effect of the vow, meaning the vow now he might be liable. That's true. We're going to get to that in a minute. Whether just being liable to bring korban, that's an after effect. But we're talking about the sin itself. That's it. There's nothing left to sin. He can't sin again. He can't violate the vow again. And so annulling the vow has no effect on the permissibility or the prohibitions of his actions. There's no extra obligation or less obligation. That's true of Nazir, where he has an obligation to do a second Nazirut. If he annuls the first, right now, then that second Nazirut goes away because it takes the place of the first one. So as long as there's an after effect of that, you would see a difference of his obligation. If you annul the first, you can still annul the first. But if there's no after effect of the obligation, then that's it. It's too late. You cannot annul it, and that's Rava's case with the loaf of bread. All that was Rava's opinion, and now we have another opinion. Amemar Amar, afilu achala hakula nishal aleha, ibeshogeg mechusar korban, ibemezid mechusar malkot, aval kefatu al haamud la kiddush Damar Shemuel kefatu al haamud veras mibet din patur. So now Amemar has a completely different opinion, and he says, if someone made a vow, I'm not going to eat the loaf, and he ate the entire thing, he can still annul it after he finished eating the whole thing. Why? Because there is an after effect. Amemad considers the punishment to be an effect of the vow, and he didn't get punished yet. So let's say he ate it bishogeg, so he didn't bring a korban yet, so he can still annul it, because by annulling it, it will have a major effect. Right now, he has to bring korban. If he annuls it, he doesn't have to bring a korban anymore. So you can still annul, even though he sinned already. The korban, the punishment, he still didn't do. And if he did it b'mezid, he violated. So he didn't get lashes yet. So therefore, he can annul it and thereby not get the lashes. After he finishes, let's say he finishes getting the lashes, or he finished bringing the korban, he's done with that. Now he wants to annul it. Then even Amemad would say, what are you annulling? There's nothing to it. You can't annul it now because the annulment will not change anything for you. So that's it. The whole deal is done. You can't go back now and annul it. But as long as the punishment is still outstanding, you can annul it. Rava would disagree. Rava says, no, we don't look at the punishment. If you still have to do the punishment, okay, you're liable to a punishment. You can only annul it if there's an obligation outstanding, something that you still have to do. You still have to bring a korban. You still have to shave. Or you still have a second nizirut that's hanging in the wayside because of the first. As long as as an obligation that you still have to do, or another kezayit that you can eat, then you can annul it. When there's no more obligation because of that vow, then you cannot annul it, even if there is a punishment. Amemar says, even if there's a punishment still left over, you can go ahead and annul it. However, Amemar would agree that, let's say he made this vow, and he violated the vow. He ate the bread, and then he deserves malkut because he did it b'mezid. And they tied him to the stake in order to start whipping him. And but they didn't whip him yet. Can he annul his vow then? So if he already did that, then no, he's too late. Even though they didn't start whipping him, they started the process of giving him the punishment. As Shemuel said, Shemuel, we learned this earlier, that if they tie a convict, he deserves lashes, they tie him up, and they're ready to give him lashes. They didn't give him even one lash yet, but somehow he was able to escape and he ran away. That's it. He got his punishment. Even though he didn't get one lash, just the tying up is already shameful to him, and he already got some of the punishment in that way, so he got away with the rest. We don't bring him back and do it all over again. So because tying him up is already part of the punishment, so as long as he didn't get a punishment, then he can annul the vow. But if they tied him up already, that's already, he started getting the punishment. So now you cannot annul it because he already got even part of the punishment, and that part of the punishment really could take the place of the whole thing if he would run away. So to here, that part of the punishment is like since he already started, then you cannot annul it, and they're going to continue to give him all of the lashes, as long as he doesn't run away, of course, and he gets all the lashes, and he can't annul it in the middle during the punishment. Tying up is already the beginning of the punishment. Velahi hatam ras hachad ladas. But then the Gemara rejects that comparison and say, no, it's different. When in Shemuel's case, he actually ran away. So since we started the punishment, he got shamed and he got tied up, which is not very pleasant, and then he was able to escape. So Shemuel is saying there, since we began this punishment, we're not going to restart it all over again. Okay, he got away with it. However, that's different from someone who's trying to annul. He still has more lashes to go. Okay, you just tied him up. He still has lashes to go, so there's still something to annul. It's not like he ran away. If he ran away and stopped altogether, then you don't restart. But right now, he's tied up. Okay, so you started, but you didn't give him any lashes, so he's going to get lashes. That's a significant consequence of the annulment. Therefore, even if you tied him up, the bottom line is he can still say, wait, I want a rabbi here, I want to annul the vow, and if the rabbi agrees and annuls the vow, then you let him go and he won't get any lashes. אמר רבא, שבועה שלא אוכל כיכר זו אם אוכל זו, ואכלת הראשונה בשוגג, והשנייה במזיד, פטור. Rava has a really interesting logical case. Let's say the person has 2 loaves in front of him, and he makes a vow, I will not eat this loaf if I eat that loaf. Let's call them A and B. A is the trigger loaf. B is the one that the vow will apply to. So he says, I make a vow that I will not eat loaf B if I eat loaf A. Or we could put it in other words in a different order. I make a vow that if I eat loaf A, then B will be prohibited to me. So actually loaf A is never prohibited to him. He can eat loaf A, that's totally fine. Just if he eats it and he realizes that, then he can't eat loaf B. Or if he puts a loaf A away, then he can eat loaf B. So let's see some different scenarios. Let's say he ate the first one, bishogeg. Now bishogeg is not applying to a prohibition on A because there is no prohibition on A. He can eat it. Bishogeg here means without intention that it will trigger the prohibition of B. He made the vow, he forgot about it, and he eats loaf A, thinking this is just a regular loaf, not thinking about the vow and that this will trigger a vow to a prohibition on loaf B. He finishes eating it. Then he does remember it and he eats loaf B intentionally. He is patur. Why? Because the oath never takes effect. When he made the oath, it was only conditional oath, so nothing actually happened when he said the words. When he ate loaf A, he wasn't thinking about it, so it's not going to come into effect if he's not thinking about it. Therefore, even though he remembered later and he ate loaf B, knowing that he had once upon a time made a vow and that he ate loaf A, but because while eating loaf A, he wasn't thinking about the trigger, therefore the trigger never happens, and he's patur, he doesn't have to bring a korban. However, the other way around, rishona b'mezid u'shnia b'shogeg chayav. If he had the first one with intention, he ate the first one knowing full well that this is going to trigger a prohibition on B. Now, he didn't violate anything yet, but he does create a prohibition. And then he forgets about it and eats loaf B, forgetting about the vow that he made and the fact that he fulfilled the condition, and he eats it. Then he has to bring a korban, because that would be the same as any case where you make a vow, I'm not going to eat this, and then you forgot about it and you ate it, so then one is liable. That's that case. Shetehen b'shogeg patur. Certainly, if he ate the first one, forgetting about the vow, and then he ate the second one, also forgetting about the vow, certainly he is patur, he doesn't have to bring a korban. And shetehen b'mezid achale litna'eh v'hadar achale li'isure mechayav. Achale li'isure v'hadar achale litna'eh pilugtad Rabbi Yochanan v'resh Lakish. The man damar hatra'a safek shem hatra'a chayav. The man damar lav shem hatra'a patur. Now, if he ate both of them b'mezid, you would think, oh, for sure, then he has to bring a korban. But not so fast. It depends what order. If he ate the conditional one, meaning A first, and then he ate B, then certainly he is liable. He ate A, knowing that this will trigger a vow against B, and then he eats B knowing that he made a vow against it. So then he's certainly liable not just to korban, he's actually liable to lashes because he violated his oath on purpose. But if he ate first B, now, at that point, when he's eating B, there's no prohibition on B because he didn't eat A yet. So he eats B. And then he eats A. Well, that will be dependent on whether Hatra'at Safek is a Hatra'ah. This is a machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish that we saw earlier. One of them says that it is a Hatra'ah. Someone, while he's eating B, someone sees him, and in order to make him liable, he has to have a warning. So someone sees him and says, listen, I know you're eating B, don't you know that you made a vow that if you eat A, then you'll be liable to B. And you are eating B right now. Now, right now it's okay, but should you later eat A, then this will have been prohibited. But we're not sure if he's going to eat A or not. So you're giving a warning for something that may be prohibited or may end up not being prohibited. So one opinion says Hatra'ah, Safek Hatra'ah, is a warning, and therefore he is warned. He did it b'mezid. He ate B knowing that it could be prohibited. He ate A knowing that this will have made it prohibited, so he's liable to lashes. But the other opinion says, no, forewarning only works if for sure he will be liable, and at that point that he's eating B, it's not for sure that he will be liable. Maybe he won't eat A. So even if he does eat A, the fact that he ate B was without a proper warning. Without a proper warning, there will be no punishment. Tila'an zo bezo. Lo achal zo im ochal zo. Lo achal zo im ochal zo. And now a variation of the case. He made them each dependent on the other. If I eat A, then I'm not allowed to eat B. If I eat B, I'm not allowed to eat A. So then he can eat one of them, it's true, but that one will trigger the next one, and vice versa. So then he ate A, knowing that if he eats B, then A will have become prohibited. So he knows that there may eventually be a prohibition on A, but right now there is not. And he did not think about the fact that by eating A, he's causing a prohibition to B. So because this is a shegaga regarding the other one, it does not create a vow, an obligation upon B. And then he did the same thing with B. He ate B knowing that this could become prohibited if he ate A. And actually he did eat A, but so he ate B knowing that he had eaten A, but without intention that by eating B, it's creating a prohibition on A. In this case, he's exempt. He doesn't have to bring not lashes and not a korban. The main reason is because when eating A, he didn't think about the fact that A would trigger a prohibition on B, and therefore B is never prohibited. And the same thing the other way around. When he eats B, there is no intention to cause it to trigger a prohibition on A, so there's no prohibition on A. So therefore, even though when he's eating A, he knows that this could become prohibited if he eats B, but at the time he eats B, he doesn't think about that it will create a prohibition on A. So there's no prohibition on A ever created, there's no prohibition on B ever created, so he's exempt from both. The other way around, if he eats A, knowing it will trigger a prohibition on B, then it does create a prohibition on B. While he forgets that there could be a prohibition on A if he eats B, and then the same thing, he eats B, knowing that this will create a prohibition on A, although forgetting that there is a prohibition, could be a prohibition on B itself, then he's liable to bring a korban olah for each one that he eats because he violated both. The fact that he was aware when he ate A that it will trigger B means that it does create a vow. Now, there is a vow on B. While he ate B, he forgot about it. Okay, that's shogeg. That's any case of shogeg against a vow, he has to bring a korban. And the other way around also, so he's liable. Shetehen b'shogeg patur. He ate both of them with total shogeg. He forgot about both conditions, then certainly be patur. Shetehen b'mezid, asheniyah michayev arishona, peluktad Rabbi Yochanan v'Resh Lakish. And if he ate both of them intentionally, meaning the first one he knew that this may become prohibited, and it will make the other one prohibited, and so too, the second one, he knew that was prohibited, and it might make the first one prohibited. So now he does everything b'mezid, but to give someone lashes, you need to give forewarning. Well, that'll be dependent on the machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Shakish. If you say forewarning that's in doubt is still considered forewarning, then he'll be liable to both. And if forewarning is not, then he will not be liable to either one. Amar Rav Mari, Afanan Nami Tanena. Rav Mari says, I have a braita that can prove this. Actually, it's a Mishnah in Masechet Nedarim that can prove that what we said before about these conditional oaths is in fact the case. Arba'a Nedarim Hetiru Chachamim. There are 4 types of Nedarim. Now, these are Nedarim, not Shevuot. We were talking about Shevuot, but we're going to say that's the same thing. And there are 4 types that do not apply. Nidre Zeruzin, Nidre Havai, Nidre Shigagot, Nidre Onasin. If someone makes a neder as an exhortation, just to show, look, I'm really committed to this. For example, they're negotiating a price, and he says, I'm making a neder. This would be prohibited to me if I pay more than $5 for it. And then he says, okay, make it 5 1/4. Okay, fine. I didn't mean it. He was just part of a negotiation. And so that's just zeruz, just to encourage someone else to lower their price, or, for example, or an exaggeration, right? This is, I make this neder if this building is less than 1,000 feet tall. So he's making an exaggeration. It's not really, he knows it's not really that tall. And so it's clear that he didn't mean to make a prohibition. Or a shogeg, we're going to talk about that in a second. And on nasin, something beyond your control. You just didn't realize. So then you also would not be liable. Nidre shegot kesad. What does it mean, shogeg? Konami machalti im shatiti, even iskar shachav v'shata, she'eni ochel, she'eni shoter, shachach v'shata mutar. So what does it mean, shogeg? If he says, konam, this will be prohibited to me if I ate or I drank. And then, thinking that he really didn't eat and drink. But then he remembers that was totally a mistake. I did eat and drink. Or he makes a vow, this is prohibited to me if I will eat or I will drink. And then he forgets about this vow and he eats or drinks. In those cases, mutar, it's okay, because b'shogeg. And v'tani Allah, keshem shenideh shegot mutarin kach shevuot shegot mutarot. There's a braita that teaches upon that. Just like that applies to a neder by mistake, so too it applies to a shevuah by mistake. Now, shevuot shegot hechi dameh lav ki hai gavna shema mina. So what are the circumstances of a shevuah that's a shogeg? Would it not apply to the examples that we said? If you make a condition, if this then that, and then you forgot that you made this condition and you violate it, then it's okay. So just like, so here is a proof that making a condition and forgetting about the condition, then one is not liable. So that's a proof from this Mishnah and the Braita that's upon it, that the rulings that we just said are true. Aifa, Tanish Shevuot Be'Rabbah. Now we have a great story about Aifa. He went and studied the laws of Shevuot in the school of Rabbah. Pegabe Avimi Achu. Avimi, his brother, met him after he graduated. Okay, he has a certificate in Shevuot. I learned this in the Bet Midrash. Okay, so Efa should be an expert, right? So Avimi is going to ask him questions, test him out. But Avimi is very tricky with his questions. Amarle, Shevuah shelo achalti, Shevuah shelo achalti. Mahu. What if someone says, I make a vow that I did not eat? And then he says again, a vow that I did not eat. Makes 2 vows. And let's say it turns out to be it was wrong. So how many counts is he liable to? Amarle enochayev elachat. So Aifa, he's a good student, he knows, and Isur, halal Isur, if you already made a Shevuah on something and you make the same Shevuah, the second one will not take effect. So he says he only violates 1 time. Amarle ishtabasht harei yaseh Shevuah lasheker. But Avimi corrects him. No, you made a mistake. You mixed up future and past. This is talking about the past, and every time he says it, it's a Shevuah lasheker. I did not eat yesterday. Okay, wrong. You're liable. You say it again. I did not eat yesterday. That's another Shevuah lasheker. And so each one is its own liability. It's not the same. What if I was thinking about, was when someone says, I will not eat tomorrow. Then again, I will not eat tomorrow. If he's creating a prohibition for the future, then the second time he says it does not add anything new. If it doesn't add anything new, then it does not apply. So Avimi says, sorry, Efa, you're mixing up your past and the future. That rule only applies to the future, not the past, okay, you got the first one wrong. It should have been 2 counts, and you said only 1. Okay, I fast surely he's going to learn his lesson now, right? So now Avimi asks him another question. Shevuot shelo ochal tesha ve'eser mahu. Says, okay, I'm going to talk about the future. He makes a vow, I will not eat 9 pieces of this bread. And then he says another vow, I will not eat 10 pieces of bread. What about in that case? Chayav, is he liable 2 or 1 or 2? Let's say he goes and eats 10. So he answers, Chayav al kol achat ve'achat. So Efa learned his lesson because before he said he's liable only to 1, so now must be, and the answer was 2, so he's going to answer 2. Okay, so he's liable to 2. After all, they're different. So since the second one is different from the first, the second one is 10, the first one was 9, so 10 is greater than 9, so doesn't that mean that the second one will apply? And if it's 10, he's liable to both. And Avimi says, no, you made a mistake again. If he can't eat 9, certainly can eat 10. In this case, although 10 is a greater number than 9, the 9 prohibition is a greater prohibition and includes more. If he can't, once he eats 9, he already violates the vow. And the fact that he eats 10 is included in the prohibition of 9. So therefore, the second prohibition does not prohibit anything that was not already prohibited by the first prohibition, right? Because second eats 9, that's it. He already violated the prohibition. There's no way that the first vow will not apply and the second one will apply. This is not an Isur Kolel. The second one would only apply if it includes more things than the first one. If he said in the first one, I'm going to eat just barley, I won't eat barley bread. And the second one says, I won't eat all bread. Okay, the second one includes things that were not included in the first. But in this case, he said, I'm not going to eat 9, but that's it. 9 is already included in 10. So he was nothing more prohibited by the second vow than the first vow, so he only violates 1. Okay, if I got it wrong again, let's try a third question. Shevuot shelo ochal eser ve'tesha mahu. And now you switch it around. So he's always thinking about the last one that was said. And the last one was violated only 1. So he says, okay, surely I learned my lesson. It's got to be the answer is 1. So he says, Eno chayav ela achat. He violates only 1, because that was the answer last time. But if I was not careful, he didn't realize that now he switched the order in the question. And the questioner was, first he says, I won't eat 10. And then he says, I won't eat 9. And so Avimi got it wrong again. Amar le ishtabasht eser hu de lachil hatesha miachil. So no, you got it wrong again. The first time he said, I won't eat 10, which means he is only liable when he reaches the 10th piece that he eats. Now, the second vow that he makes is more liable, because now he'll be liable even when he just eats 9. Therefore, since the second one prohibits more than the first one, the second one does apply. And if he goes ahead and eats 10, then he violates 2 prohibitions. So if I got them all wrong. Amar Abaye zimnin demashkachat la leha da'efa. Abaye now wants to try to defend Efa. Avimi showed up Efa 3 times. Efa went to school, he got a degree in Shevuot, and then his brother Avimi asked him 3 questions, 0 for 3. But Abaye wants to save him, at least on the third one. And says there is a scenario in which Efa would be correct in a case where first he said 10, and then he made a vow that he's not going to eat 9 pieces, and then he ate 10, and yet he will be liable only to 1, as Efa originally said, and not as Avimi said. We can construct such a scenario. Let's see how. Kidemor, Damar Rabba. Abaye's master was Rabba, and Rabba said the following halacha. We're going to follow this halacha and give as an analogy and then apply it to the case of 10 and 9. Someone says, Shevuot shelo ochal te'anim va'anavim. V'chazar v'amar Shevuot shelo ochal te'anim. First he says, I make a vow, I'm not going to eat figs and grapes. In order to violate it, he has to have figs and grapes. If you have one or the other, then there's no violation. And then he makes a second Shevuot, I will not eat figs. Now the second Shevuot includes a greater prohibition than the first, because in the first, if you ate just figs, that's okay. In the second one, eating just figs is a violation. V'achal te'enim ve'frish korban. He eats only figs. So that violates the second prohibition. And he separated a korban. He did it by bishogeg. And now he has a korban separated for that. So that a violation is completed. And he's going to bring a korban for it. V'achar kach achal anavim lechudaihu. After that, he eats grapes alone. Havyahu lehu anavim chasi shiur, v'chasi shiur la mechayev korban. Since he ate grapes alone without figs, so grapes alone, he's not liable. It's a half of a shiur. Even if he eats a lot of grapes, the point is it's not with figs. So it won't violate the second one because the second one's only figs. He ate grapes. And it won't violate the first one either because the figs that he had eaten is already considered a separate act because he already brought a korban. So therefore that stops, that breaks his action. So that's done. And now he's eating only grapes. So he's only going to be liable for one, for the figs that he ate, and not for two. Even though he ate grapes, he won't be liable to the grapes. Hachanameh. We can apply the same principle in our case. Kegon dama shevuot shelo chal eser v'chazar v'amar shevuot shelo chal tesha. First he says, I won't eat 10 of these pieces of bread. And then he says, I won't eat 9 of these pieces of bread. Well, the 9 is adding a further prohibition than the 10. So really, if he goes ahead and eats 10, so he should trigger both of the vows and be liable to twice. But let's say, v'achal tesha v'frish korban. He eats 9. That violates the second vow, and then he brought a korban for that. So now, okay, he's finished with that sin. And then he eats 1 more. So that 10th one that he ate is a chasi shiur. It's not, doesn't add to the 9 because he already separated a korban for the 9. So it doesn't add up to those. So now it's like starting all over again. He only ate 1. And for 1, you're not going to be liable. And so here is a case where, exactly as the same setup, Avimi asked, first is 10 and then he says 9, and yet even though he eats 10, still he'll be liable only to 1, and so Abaye says, at least in this scenario, if I could argue, I was right, because there is a scenario where I'm right, so Efa gets a point in the end with the help of Abaye. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.